We're welcoming you to the 14th Annual Raleigh Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Thanks for coming out on a Sunday evening. I know this is a little bit different this year, but we do have a remarkable group of individuals and nonprofits who have served our city with distinction. Hopefully everyone is well rested after that extra hour of sleep. I always love this time of year. Well, you know, the mission of the Raleigh Hall of Fame is to induct individuals and nonprofit organizations, past and present, who have made significant contributions to the city of Raleigh. Since 2005, the Raleigh Hall of Fame has recognized 195 inductees who have helped shape our capital city. And tonight, we are pleased to recognize 8 individuals, 2 nonprofits, and 2 centennial inductees into the 2018 Raleigh Hall of Fame. Before we begin the program, we would like to thank our generous title sponsor, Capital Broadcasting Company, WRAL-TV, near and dear to my heart, of course, for producing an extraordinary series of inductee videos that you'll be seeing this evening, and its continued support for the Raleigh Hall of Fame over the years. A housekeeping matter, we ask you, out of the respect of the honorees and the guests, to mute your cell phones and other electronic devices. Also ask you not to take pictures during the ceremony. A professional photographer, that guy right there with the nice camera, is taking care of that, and those photos and a video of the proceedings will be available on the Hall of Fame website and also through the photographer. To begin our program this evening, I am very pleased to introduce the Mayor of Raleigh, Nancy McFarland.
Thank you, Bill. Good evening to everyone. Thank you all for being here. I'm honored to be here tonight to help celebrate the 2018 Raleigh Hall of Fame inductees. I want to take just a second and recognize I have, I believe, a couple council members. Councilor Nicole Stewart is here, and I think Mayor Pro Tem Corey Branch is here. Okay, he has a new baby, so he's excused. And I actually want to give a shout out also. Our city clerk, Gail Smith, is here. Gail, where are you? There she is. She's keeps us all together. Tonight's celebration honors those individuals and organizations that have made significant contributions to the city of Raleigh. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge the work of the Raleigh Hall of Fame Board of Directors and Advisory Board in support of this year's program. The Board of Directors is Teresa Abram, Mark Blake, A.J. Carr, David Korn, Randy Frazier, Joyce Kikis, Barry Malone, John Odom, Stephen Peden, Anna Price, Laura Rayner, Lacey Reeves, Delora Rivas, Ron Rogers, Gina Scott, Elsa Silverman, Tanya Sloan, Rick Taliaferro, Christy Talley, Courtney Telfair, and John Ward. So let's give them all a round of applause for all their hard work. We appreciate you all so much. Raleigh is a great community, and one that is fortunate to have so many that are dedicated and committed to giving back to the city. The individuals and organizations that we're honoring this evening span generations and all stand out for their commitment and service to the city of Raleigh. As a growing community, we often look to the future. How do we develop? How do we provide services for an expanding and diverse population? How do we attract businesses and jobs? But even though Raleigh remains at the top of many of the best of lists in the country, we must remember that we are who we are and where we are due to the many contributions of those that came before us. Tonight is an opportunity to reflect upon and celebrate our accomplishments to date and those individuals and organizations that contributed greatly to our community's success. I want to commend and thank all of tonight's inductees for their hard work and effort for the city of Raleigh. You've helped shape and influence our community in so many positive ways. So on behalf of the City of Raleigh and my fellow council members, I want to congratulate all of the 2018 Raleigh Hall of Fame inductees and thank you for all you've done and continue to do to make Raleigh a great city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor McFarland. Well, now let's meet the 2018 inductees into the Raleigh Hall of Fame. Our first inductee, O. Mort Congleton. For 4 decades, Mort worked in local government, public service, and higher education. He served as the executive director of Wake Technical Community College Foundation, helping to increase the foundation's assets by more than $10 million. He also served on the Raleigh City Council and as executive director of the Wake County SPCA. He devoted a lot of his time and a lot of his energy and resources to United Cerebral Palsy, prompting the state legislature to create the Ombudsman program for nursing homes across North Carolina to protect the interest of seniors.
Well, I've known Mort Congleton for almost 15 years. I have seen the quality of his work. I have seen the things that he's done with United Cerebral Palsy in the past, his concern for animals, and for the last 15 years or so, we've worked together at Wake Technical Community College. He has assisted us on 3 different bond campaigns, and he's even coming out of retirement to help us with an upcoming November bond campaign. He took us through our first capital campaign. He was my go-to person when we needed to get things done for the college. When I came, we only had 2 campuses. Now we've got 6, and in each and every one, he helped us accumulate the land necessary to build those facilities. Mort came up with the idea of fostering bright futures. When you turn 18 years old and you are in the foster care system, then you're basically booted out. You are pretty much on your own. And Mort saw that particular need to help former foster kids transition into work or into further education. You know, there are people, when you talk to them, you find out how great they are. When you talk to Mort, you find out how great you are. Mort's the kind of person that leaves you feeling good about yourself.
Our second inductee this evening was born a native at Raleigh's original Rex Hospital. Dr. William Bill Weston Hedrick graduated from Wake Forest College and the Bowman Gray School of Medicine prior to serving as a captain in the U.S. Army Medical Corps. Upon returning to Raleigh, he opened a medical practice and became known for making house calls. Remember those? I do barely, but I do remember. And treating patients regardless of their ability to pay. He operated the first ER at what is now Wake Med Hospital and was the chief medical examiner for Raleigh and Wake County. Bill's reach extended beyond medicine, however, having owned and operated a local restaurant and also donating part of the family farm to the City of Raleigh for all of us to enjoy.
He is the epitome of the humble country doctor. This will be 56 years that my dad has been a family doctor in Raleigh. and he works full-time still. He's 86 years old this year with no intention of retiring. He's famous for seeing anyone, regardless of their ability to pay. He's very open to accepting vegetables or baked goods in exchange for health care. When he came back from France in the army, he missed it so much that he opened a French restaurant. The restaurant was called Seth Jones 1847. The food and the wine and the music was nothing like Raleigh had ever seen. One of his contributions is the creation of Horseshoe Farm Nature Preserve. It's about 150 acres of land that my dad bought in the 60s. What it is open space that sits wrapped in the bend of the Neuse River. And because it comes around in this oxbow shape, he called it the Horseshoe Farm. That's where we lived for almost 20 years. We had horses, we had cows, we farmed the land, we had a massive vegetable garden. When the time came for us to move, there was no question that the Horseshoe would be put in the hands of the citizens of Raleigh. Because he is so dedicated, and because he's so compassionate, and because he's so selfless, he really shows people how to live your life, not for yourself, but for others. He has a heart of gold.
Our next inductee, Chief Justice Burleigh B. Mitchell, Jr., saw to it that every child is given the right of a sound education in public schools by authoring that landmark opinion, Leandro versus State of North Carolina. He served in the Navy and established a notable career in state government, serving as an assistant attorney general. I used to interview him when I was on radio. He had the best radio voice of any guy I'd ever talked to. Worked all the way up to the North Carolina Supreme Court, became Chief Justice there. Justice Mitchell wrote close to 500 appellate decisions, thereby contributing to North Carolina's body of law in the areas of freedom of expression and the protection of other constitutional rights. Beyond the bench, however, he has served as a leader in various service organizations, including the North Carolina New Schools Project, which develops and supports innovative high schools.
Burleigh Mitchell is one of the great men that Raleigh's ever produced. This man grew up here, went to school here, went off to the Navy and served us around the world, came back, went to law school. I had the chance to appoint him district attorney for Wake County at a time when we had too much crime and the docket was long. Well, he got that docket worked out. He tried them and got it going, and he put them in jail, those who were guilty, and made this a safer place. I was so impressed with him that I appointed him to be the Secretary of North Carolina's Department of Crime Control and Public Safety, a new department that had been created to protect our people. I later then appointed him to the Supreme Court of North Carolina, where he served for 17 years. The last 5 years, he was the Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court.
My job is like Paul Revere's, to ride around and wake up the players in the system to the notion that we have got to make change constructively, or destructive changes are going to be made, and we can do it.
And he rendered many great decisions, but I think the most important one is something that we call the Leandro decision, which said that the Constitution of North Carolina requires that every student have a good education, and that the public must provide it, that the state must provide it. That's historic. Later on, Governor Martin appointed him to an important commission on punishment and crime, and he did many other great things. But that man has made history. We are all in his debt, and I'm so proud that he's a North Carolinian that I've had a chance to work with him.
I am pleased to present our next inductee, Thomas H. Sayer. You know, it's hard to walk around Raleigh and not come across one of Thomas's works of art. He's known locally for his large sculptures throughout the city, including pieces at the North Carolina Museum of Art, Marble's Kids Museum, where I was today with my granddaughter, and of course, the Shimmer Wall, the amazing Shimmer Wall in this very building. Thomas sat on the North Carolina Arts Council Board, formed and chaired the Public Art Design Board of Raleigh Art Commission, and received the North Carolina Award for significant contributions to our state. His life has been an ongoing dialogue about the importance of art in the community and its potential to make a difference in the lives of our people.
If you move around Raleigh, most of the iconic symbols of our city trace to Thomas Sayer. Started with the butter churn atop the creamery that marks Glenwood South, the Wall of the World at Marble's, the unique iconic symbol of that museum. And then you go out to the Art Museum and there's Geyer on the hill, those fabulous circles that are the symbol of the Art Museum. You go to the Shimmer Wall, that is now the symbol of Raleigh, that marks the side of the Convention Center. Police Memorial in front of the Civic Building. The fabulous Oberlin Rising, which I think may be one of his premier pieces, that now marks that community. When I first met Thomas, he had come here in the early 90s, relocating from Morganton, trying to figure out what sort of role he was going to play in this city. And he and his lovely wife, Jed, became urban pioneers. They moved into the warehouse district, not just with their workspace, but with their home and their two young daughters. He had a vision earlier than anyone of what downtown Raleigh could become and of the role that he and Clearscapes could play in making it become what it has today. I think there are two unique things about Thomas's contributions. One is the diverse number of mediums in which he works. But the other thing that is entirely unique to Thomas is the way in which he can engage with the community for whom he is designing art and bring out from them their deepest and often unrealized views of what they want the art to be, what they want it to represent, and the story they're trying to tell. And I think that's why his pieces are so rooted in the communities that they represent.
And I think what public art can do is create place by drawing attention to who we are and what this place is. Who we are and where we are inseparable.
He's brilliant, but he's caring. He's really one of the most caring people I've ever known. He cares about his family, he cares about his employees, he cares about his friends, and he really cares about this community and what it's going to become and the role that he can play in that.
Ronald Dean Shavlik, Ronnie Shavlik, they called him in college, two-time All-American, ACC Basketball Player of the Year in 1956 at NC State. Ronnie accomplished as much off the court as on the court. In his senior year at State, he started a business, Carolina Maintenance and Janitorial Supply, which became one of the largest janitorial supply companies in the Southeast. And he served on numerous boards and panels and exemplified a charitable nature, especially to those who were physically and mentally challenged. Ronnie started a local youth program that continues to help today's young people set goals and develop a work ethic.
He was from Denver, Colorado, and he came to NC State in 1952 and had an illustrious basketball career from 52 to 56.
Big gun for State is Ronnie Shavlik, who dunks 2 of his 35-point total. Ronnie Shavlik's hook is in there. Into Shavlik, who puts it away.
In his junior year, he scored 55 points against William & Mary. That's a lot of points, but more importantly, against a great top 10 Villanova team, he had 49 points and 35 rebounds. He was All-American, he was ACC Player of the Year, and he and Bill Russell of San Francisco were two of the greatest centers in the 50s. After graduation, Ronnie started the Carolina Maintenance and Janitorial Service. He started with one building, and I remember when I was in college, he and Beverly would be cleaning an office at midnight. In 1973, both of our companies were experiencing business challenges, and we would have lunch 3 or 4 times a month. And one of his favorite restaurants was the Hudson Bell Cafeteria downtown. And before we'd talk about any strategies or business opportunities, he'd say, "Louis, we gotta give back to the community. We receive so much from NC State, Raleigh, and Wake County. It's our responsibility to give back." He had so much caring for people and so much affection for Raleigh, Wake County, and North Carolina. And he could have gone to the pros, and he went there 1 year and came back to Raleigh because that's where his home was. And he started a beautiful family there with children and later grandchildren. He passed away in 1983, and people still remember, they still talk about Ronnie Shavlik, and not so much about his great basketball career, but what he did for his community first, his family and his church and everything else. I just think he was an ideal person for Raleigh.
He was a heck of a rebounder. Accepting on behalf of Ronnie Shavlik is his wife, Beverly Shavlik, and we appreciate so much you being here tonight. I remember when I was in radio back in the 70s, we played some former ACC All-Stars. We had a radio station basketball team, and he was on that, and we thought, you know, as young guys, we could, you know, score a few points, but it was the biggest joke in the world. They swatted all of our shots and just totally humiliated us as we should have been. But I just remember that guy was incredible. You know, I mean, it doesn't matter how old, you've learned the basics and, you know, the fundamentals of great basketball, and yet they did it with a smile. They were really nice to us. Well, let's move on to our next one. To many of you faithful to the Raleigh News and Observer, A.C. Snow needs no introduction. My wife thinks this man is the greatest writer in journalism. And every Sunday we sit down and read the paper, and she talks about what AC had to say. But anyway, moving on. He grew up near Winston-Salem, the youngest of 15 siblings. After graduating as the high school valedictorian, he served in the Air Force during World War II and eventually graduated Phi Beta Kappa in journalism at Carolina in Chapel Hill. He rose to the position of editor for the Raleigh Times, and upon its folding moved to the Raleigh News and Observer, where he became a revered columnist, and you can still see his great stories in the Sunday paper. In 1993, he was inducted into the Journalism Hall of Fame at his alma mater at Carolina and is considered a vibrant voice of Raleigh.
I think he has written about things that affect everybody, whether it's you can't keep the squirrels out of your bird feeder, or the death of a child, or selling an old family car, or buying a cemetery plot for yourself. And he writes about everyday things that everybody can relate to. And I think he has kind of been a uniting bond for Raleigh. My father came to town, to Raleigh, in 1957 and started as a City Hall reporter for the Raleigh Times. And pretty soon after that, they had him start writing this human interest column. When he came to Raleigh, there were 60,000 people here, and now I think there are 500,000. One of the things that I think makes my dad such a good journalist, as a reporter, as an editor, and as a columnist, is he connects with all kinds of people. He grew up in a very large family. He was the youngest of 15 children of the same mother and father, who all lived in Surrey County, just north of Winston-Salem, on a tobacco farm. But he always said he would hear the train whistle on the tracks and just would think about what else is going on outside of this tobacco farm. And pretty soon he got to find out. When he turned 18, he was drafted to go serve in World War II, and then wound up coming back to North Carolina, went to college on the GI Bill, went to Mars Hill College, and then went to his beloved UNC, and that's where he majored in journalism. I think my father, in all his years of writing for the News Observer and the Raleigh Times, has almost become a common denominator for the people of Raleigh. That everybody can read something and realize that they really are connected to a lot of other people in this community. He loves his job.
Our next inductee, Millie Dunn Vesey, was a true pioneer. Born and raised in Raleigh, Vesey grew up during the Great Depression. She enlisted in the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, serving in the only all-black, all-female battalion stationed overseas in World War II. A graduate of St. Augustine's, she later returned to the college to serve as executive secretary for 2 presidents, and was the first woman to lead the Raleigh chapter of the NAACP. She worked with the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and Thurgood Marshall, and was saluted by President Barack Obama at an event commemorating World War II veterans. The passing of Miss Vesey earlier this year was indeed Raleigh's great loss.
Without a doubt, Mrs. Vesey represents the very best that the city of Raleigh has to offer. Can you imagine in the 1940s of a female, particularly an African-American female, abandoning all stereotypes to say that I'm going to do something that's unprecedented. I'm going to serve my country, and I'm going to show that women have the ability to be a part of the armed services in a very meaningful way. In the 1940s and the 1950s and the 1960s, it was not very common to see women engaged in the political process. And so for her to become the first female president of the NAACP, she was a part of that inner circle of political leaders who made it their day-to-day business to seek justice for all people. Mrs. Vesey loved St. Augustine's with all of her heart, and she was a dedicated Episcopalian. Her message to me was, Dr. Ward, make certain that you never lose the affiliation with the Episcopal Church. She always was active and engaged in looking to the future. Regardless of her age, she was very young at heart. She was on campus once meeting with me, and I said, Ms. Vesey, I want to make sure you are back home, and I'll take you back home. She said, oh no, you have things to do. You're president of the university. I'll get an Uber and I'll be fine. 90 plus years old, she's getting an Uber going back home. She taught us that you could always do more, that you could never do enough. She was of that generation that hard work was her best friend. She lived to be 100 years old, and in that 100-year life taught us the meaning of commitment. She taught us the meaning of tenacity, and she taught us the meaning of always be willing to serve. And for that, we are eternally grateful.
Oh, what a great story, a remarkable woman. Please welcome Miss Vesey's niece, Eugenia M. Pleasant, to accept the medallion on her behalf. Thank you very much, Ms. Pleasant. Defining what it means to truly be a public servant, Robert Bob Webb Wynn III has served in many, many roles. As president of Raleigh's oldest business, the Brown Wynn Funeral Home, this civic advocate served as a dedicated church layman, an education promoter, and friend of animals. He served as the Army Counterintelligence Corps and subsequently went on to serve in both the State House and the State Senate, leading the development of Fletcher Park in Raleigh, as well as initial funding for the North Carolina Zoo outside Asheboro, and the establishment of the North Carolina State University School of Veterinary Medicine. That's a lot. Bob worked diligently in desegregating schools, businesses, and civic organizations, and promoting the understanding across racial and socioeconomic divides.
My father has a long history of pouring his energy, his heart, his time into the city of Raleigh. Brown Wynn has always been as much a ministry to my father as a business. I think his role there as a funeral director has been a very deeply spiritual path for him. He's had the privilege of being with many, many people during the very hardest moments of their life, and I think he considers that a privilege and an honor. My father was only 32 years old when he first ran for the State House of Representatives, and he ended up serving 2 terms in the State House and 3 terms in the State Senate. During the various elections, we often, as I recall in my childhood, celebrations on election night were in our home, so we felt very included, I think, in his political life. So my father always looks for ways to plug in wherever he is. When my father and mother became involved in building together ministries, they were moved to, in their hearts, to relocate from Hayes Barton to the corner of Blunt and Franklin Street, which is now a very gentrified area, but at the time was part of the Halifax Court community. And what they wanted was to be neighbors to the people they were working with and coming alongside through Building Together Ministries. Later, he and my mother moved to Oberlin Road, and they were sort of on the walking path that took them near the Oberlin Road Cemetery. And as a funeral director, he was very interested in caring for that cemetery and getting it appropriately marked for the important place that it is. I think my father is a person of profound compassion, and when he is moved by a situation of injustice or by the desire to preserve something that he worries might slip away, he gets a very strong conviction and is tenacious about seeing things through to the very end. He really loves to stay with a project to its completion, and I think it all begins at the heart for him.
Okay, our first organizational inductee is Haven House Services. Haven House has been serving more than 1,300 youth and their families each year for more than 40 years. Initially a group home for girls, the agency eventually shifted to co-ed research-driven community-based programs. Haven House has developed programs to specifically solve community problems and meet the needs of families in Raleigh and Wake County. Whatever the crisis a youth is facing, Haven House is dedicated to providing access to resources in a very supportive environment.
Haven House has been a part of the Raleigh community for the last 45 years. We started when Reverend Al Dimmick and Judge Basin were in the courtroom one day. Al Dimmick was volunteering, and a young girl came in and was coming out of an abusive household situation, and they didn't have any way to help her. The only way they could help her was to lock her up instead of sending her back home, and they both realized at that time that the Raleigh community could do better. And in 1973, Haven House was incorporated. We started as group homes for girls, and then 2 years later we had group homes for boys. We have since morphed into more community-based programs, but we have been doing great things for the City of Raleigh for 45 years. We have 11 programs that deal with all of the really most troubled youth in Wake County. It could be homeless youth, it could be trafficked youth, it could be any of those type situations. A lot of court-involved youth. Basically, whatever the community has needed, Haven House has risen to the challenge and has basically been able to meet the needs of the Raleigh community. We're on Cabarrus Street, right in the middle of downtown, and we have Wren House, which is our shelter for homeless youth between 10 and 17, the only shelter available to youth of that age in Wake County. We had a guy many years ago, went home one day, he was 16, and he found a note from his mother that she was gone and had left him basically on his own. He bounced around through foster care and never really was able to find footing there. Ended up in Haven House Services, and we have a program that will put people into preparation for living adult lives, and he was able to get in that program, learn how to live on his own, and became a successful member of society. And there are thousands and thousands of stories like that. We appreciate the Raleigh Hall of Fame recognizing what we're doing, and we hope we're around to do it for a very long time.
And with us tonight to accept the medallion on behalf of Haven House is CEO Michelle Zeckman. Congratulations to you, Michelle, and your wonderful team. Our second nonprofit inductee is the Rex Healthcare Guild. The Guild provides energy, ideas, and a personal touch to improve patient care and assist Rex Healthcare through volunteerism and many different ways of financial support. Since the Guild was formed back in 1936, it has helped patients with their medical bills, served meals to needy families, donated money for expensive state-of-the-art medical equipment, and beautified the hospital grounds and also inside the hospital as well. By using profits from the sales of its wonderful gift shops, the Guild and its dedicated group of volunteers are able to contribute very significantly to the hospital and to people in need.
The mission for the Guild is to make the patients, the visitors, the doctors, the nurses, the staff, to help them in any way they can, whether it's buying pieces of equipment to make Rex the most up-to-date, or to buying balloons to make a little child who's suffering happy. Whatever they can do, whether it's you open your door and in comes a happy volunteer with mail for you or with flowers from a friend, that's what's important. It was started in 1936 by a small group of doctors' wives and a few other volunteers in the community. They were able to get 240 men and women that were willing to join the Guild at that time. Today, they have over 1,400 volunteers. In 1980, when they moved to the new Rex Hospital, they were able to contribute a lot more dollars because they opened a gift shop. Since the new Rex location, the Guild has been able to contribute $1,800,000. The money they make, they're able to redo the cancer center. They have been able to redo the main lobby. They put 195 poinsettias throughout the hospital. On December the 24th and the 25th, there are volunteers that go and deliver teddy bears to each of the patients that are in there, regardless of the age. So it's not just the pieces of equipment that they buy, but I think it's the little things that make such a difference. I just can't imagine a hospital without a team of volunteers and without the Guild. It's just incredible to see what a difference it's made at the hospital in our community.
Please join me now in welcoming and congratulating Bonnie Woodruff, President of the Rex Healthcare Guild, as she accepts the Raleigh Hall of Fame medallion on behalf of the organization. Thank you, Bonnie, for all of your great work over there, your meaningful service. It really does make a difference. Our first of two centennial inductees is Father Thomas Frederick Price. Father Price was the first native North Carolinian ordained as a Catholic priest. In 1896, he was appointed the pastor of Sacred Heart Catholic Church on Hillsborough Street. His twofold mission was to spread Catholicism and to care for children in need. Part of his legacy is the Nazareth Orphanage for Boys he started in 1899 on the western edge of the city. At the height of the Depression, the orphanage cared for as many as 250 children across the state without regard to religious affiliation.
Father Price was born in 1860 in Wilmington, North Carolina. When Father Price got to Raleigh in 1896, it was a very small congregation. Across the state at that time, there were only about 1,000 Catholics, and here in Raleigh, certainly not more than 100. He was given permission to start purchasing property to found the two things he wanted to found, the orphanage and the apostolate headquarters. He had been working around the state, and he saw the poverty, kids in just destitute, not only orphans, but families unable to afford to support their children. So he got his sister, who was a Sister of Mercy of Belmont over on the other side of Charlotte, to come and help. And so together they established the orphanage. It took these young people who probably would have amounted to nothing. They couldn't get an education. They weren't being fed properly. He educated them. He nourished them. He helped them to learn trade. At a national meeting, he meets Father Walsh from Boston. Father Walsh has this idea of founding a foreign mission society. And Price realizes that his call is to preach the gospel not simply to North Carolina. And they join up. They form the Maryknoll, which is the Catholic Foreign Mission Society of America. So when the time came that they were able to send their first missionaries, Father Price insisted that he would lead the first missionary band. And they went to China. And he was only there a year when he got appendicitis, and by the time they got him to Hong Kong for surgery, it erupted, so he died there in Hong Kong. I think he'd be very proud of what happened to his property. I mean, that lot, even though it was basically an orphanage, it was headquarters of the Catholic Church in our diocese for almost 90 years, and now to be able to put the cathedral there and name it the same name as the little chapel that Father Price built, I think that's kind of special. He would be amazed.
Great story. Accepting the medallion on behalf of Father Price, please join me in welcoming Monsignor, the Reverend Monsignor Gerald Lewis, who oversees the archives for the Diocese of Raleigh. Thank you very much tonight for being with us. Thanks for sharing that wonderful story. And finally, I'm pleased to present Canty McDowell Venable Sutton as our second centennial inductee. Back in the late 1930s, Miss Sutton established the Raleigh Little Theater and the Raleigh Rose Garden. She even starred in the theater's first production of Macbeth. While she was a talented artist, author, philanthropist, and volunteer, it was her drive to develop the Raleigh Little Theater that would leave a legacy for all of Raleigh to enjoy today.
Canty Sutton, I think, is a real example of a Renaissance person. She excelled in so many different areas. She was a talented artist, she was a writer, she was a hostess, but above all other things, she was a really wonderful philanthropist and a great leader. And without her, we wouldn't have the Raleigh Little Theater complex as it is today. The theater itself, the Rose Garden, the amphitheater, it was really largely due to her efforts as building chairman and as a person who wouldn't take no for an answer. Probably one of my favorite quotes about her describes her as a theatrical Joan of Arc, waging a one-woman battle against the bureaucracy of the WPA. That was what Guy Munger said about her, that she was just a real force of nature. She was the kind of person who had a vision about something that community needed, and that she set about to make it happen. Once the theater was built, though, her job wasn't done yet. She envisioned a rose garden. She said, we've got this beautiful space here, why don't we develop it? And so once again, she went out and she asked the city, can we build a rose garden here? And then she went out and raised the funds. And then 10 years later, the Raleigh Rose Garden was completed and dedicated in 1951. Canty Venable Sutton was also an accomplished artist who had her art exhibited in a number of different places. She was not somebody who just was a champion of the arts, but she was also an artist herself. Raleigh in the 1930s was a much smaller community, and it was not nearly, as cosmopolitan as it is today, much like many places are. And I think that Canty Venable Sutton was an early person who was a leader in this community, who showed how important the arts were to transforming communities. If she was able to see where Raleigh is as a community, and specifically the Raleigh Little Theater, she would be really gratified to know that over 1 million people have gotten to visit the campus and take in shows and enjoy the Rose Garden and things like that. Because I think she always envisioned this as a place that generations would be able to enjoy and would really improve the quality of life for everybody in Raleigh.
And let us welcome now Miss Sutton's granddaughter, Canty Sutton Tanner, to accept the medallion on behalf of Canty Sutton. Congratulations. And now please join me in another round of applause for all of these inductees of 2018. We would like to express our gratitude to the title sponsor, Capital Broadcasting, WREL-TV. Our celebration tonight would not be possible without additional support of our patrons and sponsors. Our grand patrons, our friends at Brown Wynn and Dignity Memorial, City of Raleigh, Julia and Frank Daniels Jr., UNC Rex Healthcare, and our patrons, the Catholic Diocese of Raleigh, Smedes York family, Williams Mullen. We're also grateful for the many other sponsors listed in your program tonight, so let's have a round of applause to show our appreciation. And finally, the Raleigh Hall of Fame Board would like to share with you a song that I was asked to write several years ago about the city of Raleigh and what makes it such a special place we live in. So now let us roll the video.
Where the acorns fall, where the trees grow tall, great ideas form. Here where hearts are warm, with hospitality and rich diversity, where you can grow to be your best. Raleigh, we love you, Raleigh, the lay of your land, your springtime so grand, spirit of your past, something we hold fast, and the hope for a bright tomorrow.
Beneath the high-rise steel remains a small town feel, sweet and gentle breeze to this vibrant place. Concerts in the park, fireworks after dark, a perfect place to launch your dreams.
We love you, Raleigh, the lay of your land, your springtime so grand, spirit of your past, something we hold fast, and the hope for a bright tomorrow. Summer is serene along these trails of green, laughter on the lawn, fiery autumn dawn. Universities and stately agencies, robust heart and soul of the New South. Home of champions
and celebration,
home of heroes,
large and small,
place of compassion
and interaction,
open hearts and open minds. Raleigh, we love you, Raleigh, the lay of your land, your springtime so grand, spirit of your past, something we hold fast, and the hope for a bright, the hope for a bright, yes, the hope for a bright tomorrow.
Special thanks to Marty Long for helping out with that video, and Anita Normanley, the woman who did such a fabulous job on all of these videos, was the one who edited that. So it was fun to watch again. As we look ahead to our celebration next year, and it will be here before you know it, please consider nominating worthy citizens of Raleigh for induction in 2019. A partial explanation of the nomination process is included on the back of your program. Nomination forms are available on the Raleigh Hall of Fame website at www.raleighhalloffame.org. Completed nominations will be due in March of next year, and we look forward to receiving your nominations. Good night, safe travels, and thank you so much for being here tonight. Hope you have a great week.